Hello, my name's Amanda. Happy Valentine's Day. And this video is going to be about near-death experience, the invisible heart chambers, and prison planet theory, simulation theory that's been flying around the new age videos on the internet. And some of these topics actually come out of some really cool client sessions that I've had recently and conversations. So when that happens, I always like to try and share something on here because that means that there's more people processing these topics. So I had a near-death experience in 2017. The link to the video about that is in the description. And yeah, let's just jump right in. So in that near-death experience, just to give you a quick recap, the takeaways from it for me were being in a place, a dimension without the body, that was more love and more security than I have ever experienced in my human life, as well as what kind of started to turn into a remembering and a familiarity of who I really was and what I was actually connected to. And when I came away from that near-death experience, everything changed for me. So I knew that I had been to an invisible dimension that I didn't understand, very suddenly, out of the blue and chaotically, returned back with an extremely different way of seeing things because I now had the contrast of that dimension, that space where I went, which sometimes I call like the threshold of higher dimensions. And it caused me to want to change almost everything about my life because slowly, over the course of 6 months to a year, nothing seemed to bring the same satisfaction and joy, all of the matrix, physical world things that I was getting my happiness and my pleasure and my peace from, like outward appearances, how fit my body looked, how great I felt about my career status, my social status, all kinds of these things that are really blessings to have. In contrast to the experience of my near-death experience, they all seemed very temporary and things that should be appreciated but really not be attached to. And so, jumping forward to why I want to start with the heart chambers and near-death experience is because in the years that passed, I have had a handful of spontaneous out-of-body experiences, none that have been as dramatic and catapulting as a car accident on the side of a mountain, but where my consciousness has very spontaneously, I would say, found itself in a very similar dimension or vibration. And I now believe that the near-death experience was kind of like a door opening to a layer of what is like ongoing dimensions of the nature of the vibration of the heart. So I'll give you an example. The most recent one I had, I was just waking up in the morning, and before I opened my eyes, I was somewhere else, although I could actually physically feel my bed. I knew I was waking up on planet Earth. And before I opened my eyes, the realm of reality that I was in, it had a visual, although the visual isn't really like that important, but I will share it. It had like a lot of kind of like gold carvings, really kind of like cathedral-like ceilings, different shades of like red and pink, and there was kind of like, it felt almost like the structure that I was in was enclosed and contained, but it itself, the walls of it, if that makes sense, were kind of like glowing love at me. And this is what's important, the same presence that I encountered in my near-death experience that kind of weaves its way through my life in subtle ways ever since. It's never left me. That presence was in that place with like the red walls and the gold carvings. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm back. And immediately, a lot of the same aspects as I experienced my near-death experience started to happen. So I started feeling like an overwhelming soul warmth in my heart center, kind of like a warm coal, not burning, but just like vibrating and buzzing and heating up. that spread to my whole body. You might call it bliss or ecstasy, but I just really feel it was like the heart in a vibration of warmth. And then I could feel the presence that was around me watching me, kind of like if you watch a baby wake up and you're seeing a baby kind of like open its eyes and look around the room, and you're just kind of like observing that happen. It was like the presence was watching me come to awareness in this place, watching me experience that familiarity and that acceptance and that safety, and was just taking joy in watching me. And it was a reminder that even though I have gone on many human journeys, been here and there, gone through the dark nights of the soul and wonderful things since my near-death experience, this place, this vibration, this threshold hasn't gone anywhere. It's always been there. It's just been the fact that as a human being in a dense physical body, it's very difficult for us to like just jump in. So I feel like this experience and the handful of others were kind of reminders and experiences of grace, so that I could retain a little bit of this vibration and remembrance for myself. So yeah, sorry, I'm all over the place. I would say that every human being in their heart center is connected to the great heart of the universe that is outside of any physical locations, outside of time and space. And for all of us, we have the potential to be there more and more often. And that might sound like really far-fetched and like that could never happen to me, but there's nothing special about my life. If that can happen to me, that can happen to anybody else. And I also have been listening to a few people talk about their near-death experience since mine. And when they're describing this like vibration of place of home and belonging and warmth and presence and maybe other like very loving beings, I feel like we're kind of describing the same place, but it's coming through with like a different experience, different visuals, maybe a different cosmology depending on like what culture a person is from. But what's important is we're there and we're kind of seeing through our individual eyes that experience, which can explain like some differences between different near-death experience accounts. After waking up and like opening my eyes and getting out of bed, I was crying. I couldn't help just crying with gratitude and connection. And if I could describe it as anything, it would be like being hugged by everyone who's ever loved you and everyone who you've ever loved, including like all the animals, all at the same time for as long as you want to sit there. Like, and then on steroids. So, yeah, that's how it felt. I want to be really clear too that this heart realm, I'm calling the heart chamber, a heart chamber, which I believe there are many beyond, is very different from like a typical astral realm experience, astral travel, which has amazing purposes, for our learning, for our awareness, for our discernment, for like working with our third eye. There's so much there, but compared, I would say there's a little bit more of a coldness and like an observation and a understandings of like a mind nature that come when being like in the astral realm or doing astral travel. But there's something very different about the heart place, which is probably why people who have, an astral experience don't have like a tremendous full life change and like change trajectory immediately. Opening of the heart and being in the heart chambers does have the potential to bring those massive changes that you're kind of like, you're not really doing anything but following the breadcrumbs of where you feel your heart is being pulled after a situation like that. Like, yes, you're making the decisions, you're implementing the changes, maybe moving, maybe switching to minimalism, maybe stepping out of certain relationships. But it's almost like the heart is leading in you into those things and you have absolutely no doubt in the decisions that you're making. So yeah, I would say that this realm is always there, but it's just not always accessible because of the density that we're in and the work that we're doing in, what I would agree is like Earth being a schoolroom. So in the years after my near-death experience, I really wanted to learn from other traditions, other mystics, because I don't believe that I don't believe that any one person should, it's like not enough to work in your own mind with random experiences. Yes, there can be a lot of truth to those and reality for you personally. But when we learn from other sacred traditions in like their most pure version, which are usually mystics that have had experiences and write them down before they get all dogmatized, comparing my experience, not comparing, but like reading through these others' experiences and traditions, and then realizing, okay, so the elements of what I was experiencing is matching here, 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 and then having more of a relaxing around, yes, this has a place that it fits in the structure of the universe. It's not random. There's so many random New Age teachings and channelings and feel-good messages out there, which many of them contain a lot of truth, but many of them contain a lot of, you know, distortion, deception, personalization things, and those parts of those messages that don't match up to any sacred tradition, I would be really discerning about. So some of the traditions, there are so many, but like Bhakti Yoga, the devotion and the love for the divine, elements of shamanism, in Western alchemy, the alchemy of the heart, the Buddhist teachings of ambrosia. These are some of the things that are using their own language and their own cultural context, but they're speaking of the same thing with different symbols and different methods. So if you're wanting to work more with the heart, it's not like a masculine path where like we follow like a set of instructions and like methods to like open the heart. Although there are lots of different things that you can feel into, like what resonates for you, that are potential ways to start opening it and putting the intention there that you want the heart to start opening more so that you can have your own experiences. And Gigi Young talks about having like a hand on the heart and cultivating like a velvety, soft, like a bees buzzing sensation, a vibration that kind of reaches through the different fibers of your body, having loving thoughts towards yourself, and having no expectations about what happens and when and what that looks like, allowing yourself to kind of take a receptive mode and be surprised when grace comes. But for grace to come to us, we have to be open to a degree. We have to be intending to be open. So just having no expectations, because our hearts are really closed in this dark age. Like, that's because we've had to protect ourselves in the eons that have passed, in our past lives, in our early lives here on earth, in this life, from predators, from abusers, from like the elements of nature that are dangerous, you know. And so we kind of recoil in fear so that we don't die. And then we find ourselves now like in a time of spiritual awakening, but our heart is still closed. We still have a contraction, not because we're doing anything wrong, but because the contraction belongs to an older cycle. And so, yes, there are still predators and there's still trouble on earth and reasons that we feel we need to like close and constrict our heart. We're not like opening it so that people can come and stomp on it. That is totally not what this is about. There is kind of like a, what's the word? In the heart work, we have like the cold flame, which is like silence and observation, but it's still love. And then we have the hot flame, which is like expression and sharing and like acts of love. And so we're not putting ourselves out there to be like a doormat, because that is not love. If you're finding yourself doing that, then you probably are going to want to more switch into like the cold flame. Anyway, that's an aside. Just to not have any guilt or shame or think anything unkind about yourself if you're somebody who does have like a constricted heart center, because there are reasons that you've had to react to constrict that heart center. The time does come though where you're like, okay, I'm in this constricted heart center, but nothing is getting in. Like, I'm not feeling anything about anything. Maybe I'm not feeling terrible things and bad people are coming to my life. Like, I've blocked that out, but I've also blocked out everything good as well. And so when we get there, then we know, okay, it's a great time to start working with the heart. And like I said, you're going to have your own way in, but starting with like just cultivating that that feeling of soul warmth in your heart. And if nothing's happening, like, invite in like spirits and angels of soul warmth to come and help you. So there are also in shamanism, we have different plants that have their own personality, their own gifts, their own quality, their own essence. And when working with the heart, sometimes we work with rose. Sometimes we work with rose. It has the highest vibration of any flower. Its beauty, its softness, its smell, like, these are all things that are like heart opening. So having roses, smelling roses, rose essential oil, drinking rose tea, these are things that can help the process, help your meditations. And then the rose also has thorns, and the thorns aren't like attacking anyone. They're just there. They're there at the right place at the right time, because sometimes situations and people aren't the right match for us. Sometimes situations and people aren't the right match for us. And so the thorn part of the rose, it's kind of like a sign, like, okay, you stop here. Let's use our common sense. You stop here and I'm over here. No closer, because this isn't going to come to anything good. And so working with like the qualities of rose can really help bring that balance into your life. Another one that's really amazing is cacao. Ceremonial cacao, if you can get your hands on some of that. Usually it's prepared in a sustainable way, and it doesn't have like sugar or additives. You'll know, like, you could probably Google ceremonial cacao and find something nice online. It's not going to be sweet, and you can also look up instructions on how to prepare a hot drink in like a ritual way. And playing heart-centered music, I'll put a playlist that I like in the description. Playing heart-centered music while you're preparing the cacao, or singing, speaking intentions into it, just kind of like taking time to prepare that cacao. If it's activated properly, when you drink it, slowly drink it, you'll feel like some warmth in your heart center for sure. And then you can take that feeling, that experience of heart warmth into your meditation. And with your heart like especially open from the activated cacao, you can ask questions to your own self, like, is there a place that I'm constricting my heart in life, and is it time to open it? And if so, like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And just kind of like asking yourself questions that you need to ask. Yeah, that's cacao. So beings that support the heart, that support our path to opening these heart chambers: Mary, Christ. And when we work with Mary and Christ, it can be a little bit, there can be a little bit of a serious tone to their energy. They are carriers of the Sacred Heart, that painting of like a flesh and blood human heart with like the thorns, representing like feeling everything, feeling the full spectrum of human experience, including deep sorrow and deep pain, and yet continuing. You can see like some of the paintings, Mary and Christ are kind of like opening their shirt or their dress or whatever, and exposing that heart no matter what, because they're able to like flood their being with this heart-centered energy, so that no matter what anyone's doing or saying, petty people who are doing ignorant things towards them, they're not taking it personally, because they're flooding themselves with that heart. They're still feeling pain, but they're not taking it personally. And we can take that into our life. When we're working with the heart and we come into a situation where somebody's doing or saying something that's rubbing us the wrong way, we can activate our own heart center, flood our body with that energy that we're already practicing cultivating in our meditations. And then whatever they're doing or saying, like, we can observe it without judgment. choose to not take it personally, and then respond in the most appropriate way we can. And the heart energy kind of keeps us in this soft, neutral place where it's protecting us from being too triggered. Yeah. There are a lot of really beautiful heart invocations. I will link one of my favorite ones in the description. So just like songs that the words are translating into, like, let's open the heart. Open the heart now. That's a beautiful one in Spanish. I'll link in the description. And then for the academics out there, there's an amazing article by David O'Dorisio talking about Jung's work and the alchemy of the heart. And it's really awesome. I'll link that in the description. So just give me a sec here, because it's pretty wordy. I pulled out a few pieces of gold. One thing that the article says is the heart, understood as Brahma himself, the abode of all things, the support of all things, the heart, the supreme Brahma. The Supreme One is the abode of the Supreme One. The material and the mental, the material and the psychic, are united in the heart. So another way of thinking about it is your upper chakras, like your opening to God, your ability to see in other dimensions, see truth, and your throat center are being merged with your survival, your creativity, and your power chakras in the lower part of your body. So they come together in the heart harmonizes. And if one side is out of balance, like if you're too much in your spiritual world or you're too much in your material world, the heart work will kind of bring these two into balance. The heart is the one goal of all forms of knowledge, and this kind of comes back to it being a shortcut. So there are so many different paths and traditions, and people follow what is like the most resonant for them. But if you feel called to the heart path, you will find that like intuitive knowledge from the universe and from other lives are going to find its way to you just naturally. And when we actively do our work to connect into the heart, connect into the middle, this article talks about a third attitude being born, kind of like we're giving birth to a baby. So we're marrying the upper and the lower, and in doing that, giving birth to this third attitude. And so the heart is like the womb of the third attitude, which is kind of cool because in my own near-death experience, I experienced this kind of black, pillowy, dark place that was warm and welcoming and kind of feathery, and I've sometimes compared it to a womb. So yeah, it's a place where this third attitude is born. And what is that third attitude? It's the qualities of the rose, of just really cultivating that beauty and that warmth, as well as working with the thorns and knowing like what relationships are complete, what situations are complete, what am I creating space from, because this is not in alignment with what the heart is telling me. So that third attitude gets to be born, and it's like a progression for the whole rest of our lives to work with that third attitude. And this was actually kind of cool. I was having a lot of trouble putting to words this last experience of waking up in the morning and being in the heart chamber, because it was like I was there as like the observer or the experiencer, but then there was like the presence around me experiencing me. And it's like we talk about unity and oneness with God, but then we experience ourselves as separate from God, and it's like, okay, this sounds like duality. Like, how do we even put this into words? But this beautiful line from this article says, you experience a beingness, which is not yourself, which is containing you, greater and more important, but has existence. And so I think Rumi said something like, God is not in my heart, but I am in the heart of God. And that makes more sense. Like this heart chamber felt like I was in the heart of God. And so if the heart is like full of love and full of acceptance and full of warmth and full of saturating nutrition, in every way, if the energetic center of the heart that we enter into in near-death experience is the heart of God, then where could be any safer place than that? So some people use yoga poses like a bridge pose, or like a gentle variation of bridge pose, to open their heart center. And I find that when I do those gentle bridge poses or camel pose, I feel a lot of, it almost feels like a tight muscle around my heart. And so that's when I know I need to be doing this more often. This kind of like sends a message to our subtle body, like, okay, time to start opening, time to start opening. Another very passive pose that comes from the Orthodox Eastern Christianity of like the ancient past, a tradition called hesychasm. They do this pose of like bowing your head towards your heart, and you can put your hands in prayer pose. And this is like an act of submitting the mind and the thoughts, like if you have like intrusive thoughts or speedy thoughts or whatever, and you can just like bow your head for a few seconds and submit your thoughts and your mind to your heart, and like allow the vibration and the glow of your heart to kind of come up into the brain and the thoughts, and just kind of let it know, like, okay, you can submit to the heart right now, because like your brain is like a little bit too much. Yeah. So I would describe the heart system as something that wants to be activated, so we can put our intention into activating it, but we can't control what's going to show up and when. Like, we all want powerful dreams, and maybe some people want out-of-body experiences and like face-to-face with divinity and these kind of things, but we can't predict when those things are going to happen, if they're going to happen. And there's no like method to get there, but there is a method to open to it. And I think in our time, the heart teachings are starting to come back more and more. You know, like there are rose teachings that are starting to like circulate around the internet, Venusian teachings, and not from like, we can't think of like Rose or Venus from like a physical, material angle. We're thinking of it from like an elemental, what's the essence, what's the quality. Like the qualities of Venus is like receptive, mothering, gentle, like feminine, but like in a way that's like powerful, but watery. You know, these are the teachings that are coming back. It has nothing to do with man or woman. It really has to do with like receptivity and flow and qualities. So yeah, the heart's an automated system, but it just wants to be activated, like it's inside of us. So if we do our part by showing up and bringing these practices in, and anything else that kind of like comes to you intuitively, then at least the heart is open for this process to happen in its own way. And it's pretty normal, I would say expected, if difficult experiences start to show up in your life as far as your emotions. Like there have been, like I said, many past lives, early childhood like traumas, crises from this life that have like little scars, little scabs, little wounds that are between like our day-to-day experience and the heart. And so we have to kind of like move through those things and clear them and digest them in order to get to where we want to go. Like I had a near-death experience, but obviously I had to come back because I had unfinished business. And so we can find ourselves moving through like layers of memories and unwanted feelings when we start opening the heart, because there's a lot there. There is an anonymous, I think it's an anonymous writer that says, the heart itself is a small vessel, yet there are dragons and lions, there are poisonous beasts and the treasures of evil. There are rough and uneven roads, there are precipices, but there is also God, also the angels, the life and the kingdom, the light and the apostles, the treasures and all these things. And so when we're going in, we're gonna like find things that we are not finding pleasant, but it's going to be worth it, because once they're kind of like worked through and cleared, we get more and more experience of the heart in our own way. But it can be an internal battleground between the light and the dark that are evening themselves out as we move out of duality. we all have to do our part. There was another experience I'd like to share. It was an ayahuasca ceremony. It was quite dark. It was quite difficult. And I found myself in what felt like the astral realm, lower astral. And it was kind of like a very uncomfortable, deep sucking void. It was one of the most difficult ayahuasca experiences that I've ever had. It was dark, it was black, but it was no womb. It was like totally being uncontained, chaos, frightening, and I didn't know how long it was going to last, and it was just very difficult. And at some point into my awareness came like, you do have a heart center. Like, I didn't experience myself as Amanda. I didn't experience myself as having a body, and I couldn't touch base with earth. But for some reason, all that I could find in that place was my heart center, and trust me, it was small. It was like tiny, like a little speck. It was really hard to like notice and locate because of like the void around me was so overwhelming. Looking back, that void was like the unbalanced ego. And when I started to put the awareness on my heart center, on that little tiny dot, and the next day I actually had bruises on my chest because I was like really like pushing on my skin trying to find it. I started to take my awareness away from the void, away from my unbalanced ego, and into what was real, what was pure, what was available to me, although very hard to find and small. And in those next minutes, focused only on that and just kind of like withdrew my awareness from what was going on around me. And that's how I made it through. And it was a really tough night. And I actually had a hard time. It was so startling that I had a hard time integrating it for a long time after. But now I'm glad for it, because the world of temporal things, our body, our personality, all of our physical, material achievements, you know, one day we're going to get very old. One day we're going to die. Someone could come and take your riches tomorrow. There could be whatever happens. And so if our happiness and our identity is caught up in those things, that's a lot of pressure and fear to go through life. Like, you could lose it any second. But if your value is in the heart chambers, and you're starting to open that and become more acquainted with that, no one can ever take that from you. It doesn't really matter if like the world ends, you still have that. That's who you really are. And so it would be worthwhile as a spiritual person to start making that more your home and focus, because that's what we can take away from us with us when we're not in the unbalanced ego anymore, because the unbalanced ego is a temporary experience. Which brings me around to the last part of the title of this video, the prison planet simulation theory of Earth. There's a lot of videos and articles going around about us being in a very unfeeling, cold universe, that God is kind of like some kind of math calculation, some system of quantum physics that is unfeeling. And I want to be really clear that for the people that are making those videos, that's what's real for them. That's their experience at their level of development. So there's nothing wrong with that, because they're sharing what they're experiencing as reality from that level. But that's a partial teaching. And in dark ages of time like we're in right now, we're coming out of the Kali Yuga, but it's going to take thousands of years. When we're in these times, like, our teachings get sliced up, spliced up, profaned. We get portions of them mixed with somebody else's like idea, you know, so it can be really hard if we're not going back to structured teachings. It's really important to go back to like an ancient sacred tradition that, you know, you can follow back and kind of like sort out dogmatism. I mean, I appreciate the teachings of anthroposophy, Tibetan teachings, there's all kinds of things, but we have to really use our discretion in dark ages, because there are so many charlatans out there, or people who aren't meaning to be charlatans, but they're giving partial stories. So back to the prison planet thing, that can be a partial teaching, because it's not enough to work in your own mind with random ideas. We have to have a structure. And, you know, if we look at Western esoterica, if we look at the Tibetan teachings, other teachings from the East, we find a very similar story. They're using different words, they're using different cosmologies, also shamanism, I want to include that. However, we're kind of like all talking about the same thing at the end of the day before these teachings got profaned, before they got dogmatized, which is a human soul, a soul in a human body, a temporary set of experiences here on Earth, which some people call schoolroom Earth. It's kind of a newer term. But we go through long cycles of thousands of years on Earth where we're in deep density in a dark cycle, where we really forget who we are, we forget the teachings, we forget about the higher celestial beings in other dimensions, like it's almost like a fairy tale. But then as we start to move out of a dark cycle very slowly over thousands of years, we start to have more visits by celestial beings from other dimensions. We also have darker astral experiences as those forces are clinging to life on their last leg because they're dying out. And then we move up into higher cycles. So down here could be called Kingdom of Man or Kingdom of World. And up here would be more called Kingdom of Heaven. So these are different ways of experiencing the cosmos. These cycles, one complete cycle, is called in the East one breath of Brahma. And so when we go into higher cycles, we are not experiencing being in a body anymore. And that can be kind of hard to wrap your head around, but there are dimensions that we are experiencing out of the body in lighter cycles because we're more just in our light body. Okay, this is all coming back to the prison planet thing. So as we are moving through our reincarnation cycles here on Earth as human beings, in between those lives, we have a chance to face our fears, kind of out of the body after we die, look at the imprints and the impressions that we haven't processed or paid attention to on Earth, maybe regrets, maybe fears we haven't faced. And that's all kind of happening in between lives. And if we haven't been doing our meditation work, our self-reflection work, our knowing ourself work on Earth, there can be a lot to deal with after life. I think that's probably where a lot of the purgatory teachings come from. It's not like someone is there punishing you. It's literally you're seeing the parts of yourself and your experiences that you were totally unwilling to look at. So if you're doing that work in this life and in your lives, then it's going to be a lot more of a seamless experience passing out of the body. I really like the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Bardo teachings. And this is because I had a lot of my own visionary experiences that were kind of chaotic and frightening, where I was seeing parts of myself and seeing what looked kind of like wrathful deities, and it was just really kind of confusing. And then when I found the teachings on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and they talk about these Bardo realms, which are there's beautiful Bardo realms, there is Bardo realms where we're facing our fears outside of the body, all these different realms in the afterlife. They're all for us. This is all for our evolution. If we just keep on looking, we keep on taking our steps. So when I found these Tibetan teachings, their descriptions lined up so clearly with what I had seen in my own visionary experiences. Therefore, I knew that my visionary experiences weren't just random. I could trust them because they were kind of coming in line with this structured teaching. And so if you're more curious about that, look into the Bardo teachings. There's Bardos of beauty, Bardos of discovery, Bardos of becoming. And these are all things for advancing our soul, things not to run from. So yeah, as we take our journey through the cosmos, it can involve many reincarnations, but it doesn't mean that we're in a prison planet. It's not like we're being locked here and thrown back by some terrible force. It's really just it's just really us and the attachments that we haven't let go of that keep us coming back to learn lessons, but it's not to hurt or punish us. And we're all going to get to where we need to go. We are doing our work on this path not to become better than anyone else, not to become perfect, but to lighten our load, to shed attachments and attitudes. And then we have a more light experience of being a human. And then when we pass out of the body, our light body is lighter. It's clearer and cleaner. And then we're always like as above, so below. So we're always attracting people and situations that are kind of like have something to teach us or something to bless us with that are on our level. Not so different as we take our journey through the cosmos. So after we die and we start moving into higher dimensions, our light body is going to be like magnetized to dimensions and experiences that are a vibrational match for it. So if we're not facing any of our stuff here on Earth, and then we're trying to take our light body to some like amazing celestial dimension, that's not going to work for long. We're going to kind of get like rebounded into like what's more a match for that light body, which is again why I'm pretty sure that my near-death experience brought me right back to where I was and started to show me all my unfinished business, which I'm so grateful for. Yeah, a lot of people when they start working with the heart, or the heart starts working with them, because that can happen sometimes too, is they start to experience what kind of like the newest, most modern term would be ascension symptoms. Ascension symptoms, where energy starts to run through their body. It could be kundalini energy that's coming from their sacrum and is starting to circulate a bit more often. It could be energy that's kind of like coming from the heart. And with that fresh energy that is getting circulated, it can be like having a flu that flushes out toxins. And that can happen on a physical level. So sometimes when we're going through these upgrading processes in our nervous system, in our heart, and we're being like shown difficult things and we're going through difficult things, we can also have like flu-like symptoms or like chronic conditions pop up that we haven't dealt with since a really long time ago. But it's actually something to be excited about, because like congratulations, your energy body, your subtle body is starting to get cleared as this energy circulates around. So in the subtle body, you're clearing blocks in your light body, all words for the same thing. And then that light body can get more free. And then that is directly affecting your physical body. So you're feeling those blockages being cleared by kind of like purging out these old things, and it can feel like being sick sometimes. And this can happen if you're kind of like doing bardo work and letting go of imprints and impressions. You can actually have like physical problems too. But again, congratulations, because this is the important work that you came here to do. So not a prison planet where you're locked in here. You're going to where you're resident. You're going to where you're resident. And I just want to go back briefly to talking about the heart chambers, because everybody is connected to the heart of the universe, whether you're actually experiencing it right now or not. There is a part of you that is connected to God, that is home for you. And in the Bhakti writings, I'm not sure who the author is. I want to share this. He dwells in your heart. He is in you, and you are in him, and he is quite close to you. You were thinking in the beginning he could only be found in Mount Kailash, but this body is his moving temple. The sanctum sanctorum is the chambers of your heart. He exists in the past, present, and future, and one shining being sits hidden in every creature, pervading all, the inner self of all beings, the watcher of all acts, abiding in all created things, the witness, the heart, the absolute, free of attributes. And so I believe that the presence that I encountered in my near-death experience, as well as in these heart chamber handful of experiences, was him. And it's like a silly word to say him, because it's like a genderless divinity. But the divine is in you. So this kind of like this prison planet thing, this simulation that's just coming from like a lower level of consciousness. And I have seen that. I have seen that in different astral visits, but I promise you that that's not all there is. There's so much more. Anything else? Yeah, one more thing. In the mystical tradition, Sufism, there's a writer that says heavenly visions are bathed in extraordinary light. But heaven is prison for the Sufi, for who wants the garden when they can have the gardener? There are visions of light and enlightenment and illumination, and there's some amazing things you can experience in the astral and flying through the cosmos and in the infinite. And we all desire enlightenment and illumination. Deeper down, we have a desire for union. We have a desire for union and merging with the divine. And so if you recognize that in yourself, I just really encourage you to be welcome on the heart path. To be welcome on the heart path, and because it's always there. It's just not always accessible or easy to find. But I hope that something in this video might have activated a memory for you, or a knowing, or something that you want to try. But I'll put as many links as I can in the description for things that I've found so far. And if you have something that you would like to share with everyone in the comments when it comes to heart activation, please do, because that would be a blessing for everybody else. I think that's all for this video. Happy Valentine's Day, and journey well.